May I kindly ask you to take your seats so that we can start? Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, welcome to the Orka high-level dialogue on enhancing international cooperation. Today's gathering is a pivotal moment as we bring together key stakeholders to exchange perspectives on enabling ambitions for architecture. In the wake of the first global stocktake, which provides us with a comprehensive roadmap, our session today will explore best practices, opportunities, and challenges we face in our collective journey to keep 1.5 degrees in reach. As we prepare for the next round of NDCs, enhancing international cooperation is at the center of our collective effort. When we look at the latest findings and ambitious agenda for us, it's clear that COP29 will be a decisive test and a breakthrough whether the multilateral process can confront the climate crisis. This process is complex and challenging, but it remains our strongest tool. It's our best hope. We must commit ourselves fully to making it work. Our focus will be on how we can address shared climate challenges that transcend national borders, establish enabling conditions for cooperation among all stakeholders, and design synergistic approaches aligned with our long-term goals of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. By fostering inclusive multi-level cooperation, we aim to catalyze transformative action that advances sustainable development and poverty eradication, particularly for those who receive the best experience. Let us seize this opportunity to strengthen our collective responsibility, ensuring that our efforts are cohesive, ambitious, and delivering the climate resilience that our world needs. Through today's dialogue, we aspire not only to share experience and best practices, but also to forge new partnerships and reinforce existing ones. Together, we can enhance the international enabling environment that stimulates ambition in the next generation of NPCs, keeping the 1.5 goal within reach and building a sustainable and resilient future for all. Distinguished guests, now I'm honored to introduce our co-presidents of Orka to formally have this session and share their perspectives on international cooperation to accelerate climate action. First, I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Minister Dior'ama, COP29 President-designate, to emphasize his measures surrounding global climate leadership and the focus of COP29. Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues and friends, today, as we invite the presidencies of the United Arab Emirates, Brazil and Azerbaijan, the Troika of UNFCCC presidencies, we stand at an important moment in our collective effort.
Sentencing or a novel in primal cuts. Part 3. Show. This account cleared up the otherwise unaccountable mystery, and showed that the landlord, after all, had no idea of fooling me. But at the same time, what could I think of a harpooner who stayed out of a Saturday night clean into the Holy Sabbath, engaged in such a cannibal business as selling the heads of dead idolaters? Meanwhile, he continued the business of undressing, and at last showed his chest and arms. He was just enough civilized to show off his outlandishness in the strangest possible manners, but who could show a cheek like Greek egg? Which, barred with various tints, seemed like the Andes' western slope, to show forth in one array, contrasting climates, zone by zone. But think not that this famous town has only harpooneers, cannibals, and bumpkins to show her visitors, and ever, as the white moon shows her affrighted face from the steep gullies in the blackness overhead, aghast Jonah sees the rearing bowsprit pointing high upward, but soon beat downward again towards the tormented deep. Indeed, how pleasing to God was this conduct in Jonah, is shown in the eventual deliverance of him from the sea and the whale. He dropped and fell away from himself for a moment, then lifting his face to them again, showed a deep joy in his eyes, as he cried out with a heavenly enthusiasm, "Abato! Shipmates! On the starboard hand of every woe, there is a sure delight, and higher the top of that delight, than the bottom of the woe's deep." His dusky nostrils swelled apart, he showed his filed and pointed teeth, but these extravagances only show that Nantucket is no Illinois. It was an exceedingly long lay that, indeed, and though from the magnitude of the figure it might at first deceive a landsman, yet the slightest consideration will show that though 777 is a pretty large number, yet, when you come to make 18th of it, you will then see, I say, that the 777th part of a farthing is a good deal less than 777 gold doubloons, and so I thought at the time. I then went on, beginning with the rise and progress of the primitive religions, and coming down to the various religions of the present time, during which time I labored to show Queequeg that all these lengths, remittance, and prolonged ham-squattings in cold, cheerless rooms were stark nonsense, bad for the health, useless for the soul, opposed, in short, to the obvious laws of hygiene and common sense. I mean, he replied, he must show his papers, he must show that he's converted. Son of darkness, he added, turning to Queequeg, art thou at present in communion with any Christian church? And all this seemed natural enough, especially as in the merchant service many captains never show themselves on deck for a considerable time after heaving up the anchor, but remain over the cabin table, having a farewell merry-making with their shore friends, before they quit the ship for good with the pilot. If American and European men of war now peacefully ride in one's savage harbors, Let them fire salutes to the honor and glory of the whale ship, which originally showed them the way, and first interpreted between them and the savages. It was the whalemen who first broke through the jealous policy of the Spanish crown, touching those colonies, and, if space permitted, it might be distinctly shown how from those whalemen at last eventuated the liberation of Peru, Chile, and Bolivia from the yoke of old Spain, and the establishment of the eternal democracy in those parts. Not a word he spoke, nor did his officers say aught to him, though by all their minutest gestures and expressions, they plainly showed the uneasy, if not painful, consciousness of being under a troubled master eye. But to what ultimate generalizing purpose all these have written, the above cited extracts will show. Though no coward, he has never yet shown any part of him but his back, which rises in a long sharp ridge. He has a peculiar way of showing his dorsal hooked fin in swimming, which looks something like a Roman nose, if stub even, who is but a peg higher than Flask, happens to have but a small appetite, and soon shows symptoms of concluding his repast. Then Flask must bestir himself. He will not get more than 3 mouthfuls that day, for it is against holy usage for Stub to precede Flask to the deck. Thou showest thy black brow, Siva, no Dagu showing his teeth, nor, credulous as such minds must have been, was this conceit altogether without some faint show of superstitious probability. This chart divides the ocean into districts of 5 degrees of latitude by 5 degrees of longitude perpendicularly, through each of which districts are 12 columns for the 12 months, and horizontally through each of which districts are 3 lines, one to show the number of days that have been spent in each month in every district, and the 2 others to show the number of days in which whales, sperm or right, have been seen. Hardly had they pulled out from under the ship's lee, when a 4th keel, coming from the windward side, pulled round under the stern, and showed the 5 strangers rowing Ahab, who, standing erect in the stern, loudly hailed Starbuck, Stub, and Flask, to spread themselves widely, so as to cover a large expanse of water. Pull, pull, my fine hearts alive, pull, my children, pull, my little ones. Drawlingly and soothingly sighed Stub to his crew, some of whom still showed signs of uneasiness, before showing that picture to any Nantucketer, You had best provide for your summary retreat from Nantucket. This peculiarity is strikingly evinced in the head, as in some part of this book will be incidentally shown, partly to show the indispensableness of this act. It may here be stated that, in the old Dutch fishery, a mop was used to dash the running line with water in many other ships. A wooden piggin, or baler, is set apart for that purpose. Hold the stake in one hand, and show a live coal to it with the other. That done, should ye hear, espied by some timid man of war or blundering discovery vessel from afar, when the distance obscuring the swarming fowls, nevertheless still shows the white mass floating in the sun, and the white spray heaving high against it, straightway the whale's unharming corpse, with trembling fingers, is set down in the log as shoals, rocks, and breakers hereabouts. Beware! Nor all the coopers in creation couldn't show hoops enough to make hawks enough. I should like to see him try it. I'd give him such a pair of black eyes that he wouldn't dare to show his face in the Admiral's cabin again for a long while, let alone down in the orlop there, where he lives, and hereabouts on the upper decks where he sneaks so much, so that when I shall hereafter detail to you all the specialities and concentrations of potency everywhere lurking in this expansive monster, when I shall show you some of his more inconsiderable braining feats, I trust you will have renounced all ignorant incredulity, and be ready to abide by this, that though the sperm whale stove a passage through the Isthmus of Darien, and mixed the Atlantic with the Pacific, you would not elevate one hair of your eyebrow. Soon, while the crews were awaiting the arrival of the ship, the body showed symptoms of sinking with all its treasures unruffled. I say it only shows his foolish, impious pride, and abominable, devilish rebellion against the reverend clergy, seen from the Pequod's deck. Then, as she would rise on a high hill of the sea, this host of vapory spouts, individually curling up into the air, and beheld through a blending atmosphere of bluish haze, showed like the 1,000 cheerful chimneys of some dense metropolis, descried of a balmy autumnal morning, by some horseman on a height, as when the stricken whale, that from the tub has reeled out hundreds of fathoms of rope has, after deep sounding, he floats up again, and shows the slackened curling line buoyantly rising and spiraling towards the air. So now, Starbucks saw long coils of the umbilical cord of Madame Leviathan, by which the young cub seems still tethered to its stem. As we glided nearer, the stranger showed French colors from his peak, and by the eddying cloud of vulture sea fowl that circled, and hovered, and swooped around him, it was plain that the whale alongside must be what the fishermen call a blasted whale. That is, a whale that has died unmolested on the sea, and so floated an unappropriated corpse. For blacks, the year's calendar should show naught but 365 4th of Julies and New Year's days, but Pip loved life, and all life's peaceable securities, so that the panic-striking business in which he had somehow unaccountably become entrapped, had most sadly blurred his brightness, though, as ere long will be seen, what was thus temporarily subdued in him, in the end was destined to be luridly illumined by strange wildfires, that fictitiously showed him off to 10 times the natural luster with which in his native Tolland County in Connecticut, he had once enlivened many a fiddler's frolic on the green and at melodious eventide, with his gay ha-ha, had turned the round horizon into one star-belled tambourine. So, though in the clear air of day, suspended against a blue-veined neck, the pure water diamond drop will healthful glow yet, when the cunning jeweler would show you the diamond in its most impressive luster, he lays it against a gloomy ground, and then lights it up, not by the sun, but by some unnatural gases, bobbing up and down in that sea. Pip's ebon head showed like a head of cloves. Tomorrow, in the natural sun, the skies will be bright. Those who glared like devils in the forking flames, the morn will show in far other, at least gentler, relief the glorious, golden, glad sun, the only true lamp to all others but liars. If we bend down our eyes, the dark veil shows her moldy soil, but if we lift them, the bright sun meets our glance halfway, to cheer. So cried Ahab, once more hailing a ship showing English colors, bearing down under the stern. But no more enough has been said to show that the old Dutch whalers of 2 or 3 centuries ago were high livers, and that the English whalers have not neglected so excellent an example. Locks are to be put upon some of his trapdoors and shutters, and a footman will show round future visitors with a bunch of keys at his side. Who can show a pedigree like Leviathan, comparing the humped herds of whales with the humped herds of buffalo? which, not 40 years ago, overspread by tens of thousands the prairies of Illinois and Missouri, and shook their iron manes, and scowled with their thunder-clotted brows upon the sites of populous river capitals, where now the polite broker sells you land at $1 an inch. In such a comparison an irresistible argument would seem furnished, to show that the hunted whale cannot now escape speedy extinction. Much concern was shown, and Starbuck went down into the cabin to report this unfavorable affair. Not a man of the crew but gave him up hand. As for Quick himself, what he thought of his case was forcibly shown by a curious favor he asked. These are the times when in his whaleboat the rover softly feels a certain filial, confident, land-like feeling towards the sea, that he regards it as so much flowery earth in the distant ship revealing only the tops of her masts, seems struggling forward, not through high-rolling waves, but through the tall grass of the rolling prairie, as when the Western immigrants' horses only showed their erected ears, while their hidden bodies widely wade through the amazing verdure. Curse thee, thou quadrant, dashing it to the deck. No longer will I guide my earthly way by thee, the level ship's compass, and the level dead reckoning. By log and by line thee shall conduct me, and show me my place on the sea. When darkness came on, sky and sea roared and split with the thunder, and blazed with the lightning, that showed the disabled masts fluttering here and there with the rags which the first fury of the tempest had left for its after sport. They tell me, sir, that Stubb did once desert poor little Pip, whose drowned bones now show white, for all the blackness of his living skin, and now that at the proper time and place, after so long and wide a preliminary cruise, Ahab, all other wailing waters swept us, seemed to have chased his foe into an ocean fold, to slay him the more securely there now, that he found himself hard by the very latitude and longitude where his tormenting wound had been inflicted. Now that a vessel had been spoken which on the very day preceding had actually encountered Moby Dick, and now that all his successive meetings with various ships contrastingly concurred to show the demoniac indifference with which the white whale tore his hunters, whether sinning or sinned against. Now it was that there lurked a something in the old man's eyes, which it was hardly sufferable for feeble souls to see. In vain, oh, ye strangers, Ye fly our sad burial, ye but turn us your taffrail to show us your coffin. Aye, sir, for it was not darted, this is it, said Stubb, showing it. But the added power of the boat did not equal the added power of the whale, for he seemed to have treble banked his every fin, swimming with a velocity which plainly showed that if now, under these circumstances, pushed on, the chase would prove an indefinitely prolonged, if not a hopeless one, nor could any crew endure for so long a period such an unintermitted, intense straining at the oar, thing barely tolerable only in some one brief vicissitude, rising with his utmost velocity from the furthest depths. The sperm whale thus booms his entire bulk into the pure element of air, and piling up a mountain of dazzling foam, shows his place to the distance of 7 miles and more. Great God! But for one single instant show thyself, cried Starbuck. Never, never wilt thou capture him, old Mana, in Jesus' name, no more of this. That's worse than devil's madness. While Daggoo and Queequeg were stopping the strain planks, and as the whale swimming out from them, turned, and showed one entire flank as he shot by them again, at that moment a quick cry went up, sentencing or a novel in primal cuts. Part 4. Flood. In the free element beneath me swam, floundered and dived, in play, in chase, in battle, fishes of every color, form, and kind which language cannot paint, and mariner had never seen, from dread leviathan to insect millions peopling every wave, gathered in shoals immense, like floating islands, led by mysterious instincts, through that waste and trackless region, though on every side assaulted by voracious enemies, whales, sharks, and monsters, armed in front or jaw with swords, saws, spiral horns, or hooked fangs. A Montgomery's rolled before the flood, by reason of these things. Then, the whaling voyage was welcome, the great floodgates of the wonder world swung open, and in the wild conceits that swayed me to my purpose, two and two there floated into my inmost soul, endless processions of the whale, and, mid most of them all, one grand hooded phantom, like a snow hill in the air. We feel the floods surging over us, we sound with him to the kelpy bottom of the water's seaweed, and all of the slime of the sea is about us. They first caught crabs and quaggas in the sand-grown boulder. They waded out with nets for mackerel more experienced. They pushed off in boats and captured cod, and at last, launching a navy of great ships on the sea, explored this watery world, put an incessant belt of circumnavigations round it, peeped in at Bering's Straits, and in all seasons and all oceans declared everlasting war with the mightiest animated mass that has survived the flood, most monstrous and most mountainous. There is his home, there lies his business, which in Noah's flood would not interrupt, though it overwhelmed all the millions in China. Going forward and glancing over the weather bow, I perceived that the ship, swinging to her anchor with the flood tide, was now obliquely pointing towards the open ocean. Bildad, as pilot, headed the first watch, and ever and anon, as the old craft deep dived into the green seas, and sent the shivering frost all over her, and the winds howled, and the cordage rang, his steady notes were heard, sweet fields beyond the swelling flood, stand dressed in living green, so to the Jews old Canaan stood, while Jordan rolled between. Yea, foolish mortals, Noah's flood is not yet subsided. 2/3 of the fair world it yet covers. In most land animals there are certain valves or floodgates in many of their veins, whereby when wounded, the blood is in some degree at least instantly shut off in certain directions, so that did you carry them the news that another flood had come, they would only answer, well, boys, here's the Ark. Most statistical tables are parchingly dry in the reading, not so in the present case, however, where the reader is flooded with whole pipes, barrels, quarts, and gills of good gin and good cheer. When I stand among these mighty leviathan skeletons, skulls, tusks, jaws, ribs, and vertebrae till the broken bar, all characterized by partial resemblances to the existing breeds of sea monsters, but at the same time bearing on the other hand similar affinities to the annihilated anti-chronicle leviathans, their incalculable seniors. I am, by flood, borne back to that wondrous period, ere time itself can be said to have begun, for time began with man. In Noah's flood he despised Noah's Ark, and if ever the world is to be again flooded, like the Netherlands, to kill off its rats, then the eternal whale will still survive, and rearing upon the topmost crest of the equatorial flood, spout his froth defiance to the skies. So deep did they go, and so ancient, and corroded, and reedy the aspect of the lowermost puncheons, that you almost looked next for some moldy cornerstone cask containing coins of Captain Noah, with copies of the posted placards, vainly warning the infatuated old world from the flood, so that let us say it again, no dying Chaldee or Greek had higher and holier thoughts than those whose mysterious shades you saw creeping over the face of poor Queequeg, as he quietly lay in his swaying hammock, and the rolling sea seemed gently rocking him to his final rest, and the ocean's invisible flood tide lifted him higher and higher towards his destined heaven. Started from his slumbers, Ahab, face to face, saw the Parsee and hoot round by the gloom of the night. They seemed the last men in a flooded world. Some men die at ebb tide, some at low water, some at the full of the flood day, and I feel now like a billow that's all one crested comb. Starbuck, sentencing or a novel in primal cuts. Part 5. Weep. It was a Negro church and the preacher's text was about the blackness of darkness, and the weeping and wailing and teeth gnashing there, for sinful as he is, Jonah does not weep and wail for direct deliverance. The blows of the basement hammer every day grew more and more between, and each blow every day grew fainter than the last. The wife sat frozen at the window, with tearless eyes, glitteringly gazing into the weeping faces of her children. The bellows fell, the forge choked up with cinders, the house was sold. The mother dived down into the long churchyard grass. Her children twice followed her thither, and the houseless, Morales old man staggered off, a vagabond, and craped his every woe, unreverenced his grey head ascorn to flaxen curls. She was Rachel, weeping for her children, because they were not. Weep so, and I will murder thee. Have a care, for Ahab too is mad. Here, brush this old hair aside, it blinds me, that I seem to weep. Oh, my captain, a noble heart to go, no to go not. I see, it's a brave man that weeps. How great the agony of the persuasion then. Sentencing or a novel in primal cuts. Part 6. Blubber. But no more of this blubbering now. We're going a whaling, and there is plenty of that yet to come. Though their blubber is very thin, some of these whales will yield you upwards of 30 gallons of oil, for nowadays, the whale fishery furnishes an asylum for many romantic, melancholy, and absent-minded young men, disgusted with the carking cares of earth, and seeking sentiment in tar and blubber. 10,000 blubber hunters sweep over thee in vain. She has a gam, a thing so utterly unknown to all other ships that they never heard of the name even, and if by chance they should hear of it, they only grin at it, and repeat gamesome stuff about spouters and blubber boilers, and such like pretty exclamations. Don't be tearing the blubber out your neighbor's mouth. I say, I know some o' you has very big mouth. Brigger dan odors, but then the brig mouths sometimes has the small bellies, so dat the brightness of the mouth is not to swallow with, but to bit off the blubber for the small fry of sharks that can't get into the Scrooge to help themselves. Sagranda, one of their most famous doctors, recommends strips of blubber for infants, as being exceedingly juicy and nourishing. And this reminds me that certain Englishmen, who long ago were accidentally left in Greenland by a whaling vela, that these men actually lived for several months on the moldy scraps of whales which had been left ashore after trying out the blubber. The end of the hawser like rope winding through these intricacies was then conducted to the windlass, and the huge lower block of the tackles was swung over the whale. To this block the great blubber hook, weighing some 100 pounds, was attached. More and more she leans over to the whale, while every gasping heave of the windlass is answered by a helping heave from the billows, till at last a swift, startling snap is heard. With a great swash the ship rolls upwards and backwards from the whale, and the triumphant tackle rises into sight, dragging after it the disengaged semicircular end of the first strip of blubber. Now as the blubber envelopes the whale precisely as the rind does an orange, so is it stripped off from the body precisely as an orange is sometimes stripped by spiralizing it, for the strain constantly kept up by the windlass continually keeps the whale rolling over and over in the water. And as the blubber in one strip uniformly peels off along the line called the scarf, simultaneously cut by the spades of starbuck and stub, the mates, and just as fast as it is thus peeled off, and indeed by that very act itself, it is all the time being hoisted higher and higher aloft till its upper end grazes the maintop. The men at the windlass then cease heaving, and for a moment or two the prodigious blood-dripping mass sways to and fro as if let down from the sky, and everyone present must take good heed to dodge it when it swings. else it may box his ears and pitch him headlong overboard into this hole. The end of the second alternating great tackle is then hooked so as to retain a hold upon the blubber. In order to prepare for what follows, the hovers forward now resume their song, and while the one tackle is peeling and hoisting a second strip from the whale, the other is slowly slackened away, and down goes the first strip through the main hatchway right beneath, into an unfurnished parlor called the blubber room. And thus the work proceeds, the two tackles hoisting and lowering simultaneously, both whale and windlass heaving, the heavers singing, the blubber room gentlemen coiling, the mates scarfing, the ship straining, and all hands swearing occasionally, by way of assuaging the general friction. Already you know what his blubber is. That blubber is something of the consistence of firm, close-grained beef, but tougher, more elastic and compact, and ranges from 8 or 10 to 12 and 15 inches in thickness. Now, however preposterous it may at first seem to talk of any creature's skin as being of that sort of consistence and thickness, yet in point of fact these are no arguments against such a presumption, because you cannot raise any other dense enveloping layer from the whale's body but that same blubber in the outermost enveloping layer of any animal, if reasonably dense. What can that be but the skin, assuming the blubber to be the skin of the whale? Then, when this skin, as in the case of a very large sperm whale, will yield the bulk of 100 barrels of oil, and, when it is considered that, in quantity, or rather weight, that oil, in its expressed state, is only 3/4, and not the entire substance of the coat, some idea may hence be had of the enormousness of that animated mass, a mere part of whose mere integument yields such a lake of liquid as that. A word or two more concerning this matter of the skin or blubber of the whale. For the whale is indeed wrapped up in his blubber as in a real blanket or counterpane, or, still better, an Indian poncho slipped over his head, and skirting his extremity. It was mentioned that upon first breaking ground in the whale's back, the blubber hook was inserted into the original hole there cut by the spades of the mates. In some previous place I have described to you how the blubber wraps the body of the whale, as the rind wraps an orange, because those whalemen did not then, and do not now, try out their oil at sea as the southern ships have always done, with cutting up the fresh blubber in small bits. Thrust it through the bungholes of large casks, and carry it home. In that manner the shortness of the season in those icy seas, and the sudden and violent storms to which they are exposed, forbidding any other course, as its name imports, smear, fatberg, to put up. This village was founded in order to afford a place for the blubber of the Dutch whale fleet to be tried out, without being taken home to Holland for that purpose. Plum pudding is the term bestowed upon certain fragmentary parts of the whale's flesh, here and there adhering to the blanket of blubber, and often participating to a considerable degree in its sumptuousness. But to learn all about these recondite matters, your best way is at once to descend into the blubber room, and have a long talk with its inmates. With his gaff, the gaffman hooks onto a sheet of blubber, and strives to hold it from slipping. As the ship pitches and lurches about, toes are scarce among veteran blubber room men. That office consists in mincing the horse pieces of blubber for the pots, an operation which is conducted at a curious wooden horse, planted endwise against the bulwarks, and with a capacious tub beneath it, into which the minced pieces drop, fast as the sheets from a wrapped orator's desk. In a word, after being tried out, the crisp, shriveled blubber, now called scraps or fritters, still contains considerable of its sumptuous properties. With huge pronged poles they pitched hissing masses of blubber into the scalding fonts, or stirred up the fires beneath, till the snaky flames started, curling, out of the doors to catch them by the feet, to hint to such must mariners of oil, and bone, and blubber, were little short of audacity. As good luck would have it, they had had a whale alongside a day or two previous, and the great tackles were still aloft, and the massive curved blubber hook, now clean and dry, was still attached to the end.
We have 10 to 15 years if we want to save the planet, not more. So this is something, it's a parameter that shows us that if we don't move today, I mean, we can still make promises, but not actions. So we need really to work on a global community with one governance. We are calling for that for a whole of governance. It joins what you were saying earlier. We need a whole of governance approach to ensure that we are synchronized, aligned, and generating the right translation for the policymakers. The right translation between the needs of the people, the needs of the territories, and what we are bringing as actions and implementation. This would be the first thing. The second thing is we need a locally efficient impact. Whatever are the finances, whatever are the policies, if we are not having an impact at local level, there is no work, there is no achievement. So from our side, this whole of governance should allow a locally efficient impact into the action. We need this impact to touch the communities, and we need this impact to touch the territories, natural and urban. And this balance between both is the key thing that for us makes the success of the policies and the decision that this whole of community will be doing. The third thing is we have been hearing talking about trust, and I was talking about that. I think this is somehow when we hear and we listen to different voices and the local government voices, there is a loss of trust into humanity's capabilities of taking the right decisions. The cost of not having acted before is becoming too high in terms of human populations and too high in terms of cost of funds, of financing. So we need to keep somewhere and somehow the hope that reversibility is still possible. And for us, from the perspective of the local governments, reversibility is possible if we work on the right perspective of the loss and damage. We are calling for loss and damage to not be only part of the adaptation agenda, but to become the third pillar of climate action: mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. Because as you were saying, we are already living it, and our territories are already being impacted by that. And the first point is about the fact that the climate emergency is transboundary. We heard it this morning. But it is transboundary also when we are to take the right action. Of course, we need nations to generate the right strategy onto their territories, but we need them to take into account the fact that the local government and the subnational government are the best situated, the best located to know what's happening on the territories. They know the territories, they know their communities, and working together is the only way to gather this multi-level dialogue. So we think that the international cooperation and this whole of governance from the communities, the citizens, the local government, subnational government, national governments, and global governance will be the only way to have the right answer. Now, I would like to go to the last point, and it is about the social dimension of climate action. And I know that the G20 is organizing the social summit in November. The social dimension of the climate action came out strongly in the COP28, and we were happy to see the COP29 calling it solidarity. We need to grow really into a solidarity for cooperation, and not only cooperation for solidarity. It sounds like we're just asking funds. No, solidarity for cooperation, and we need really all the communities to be taken into account as such. For example, executing a framework for recognizing the role of children and youth in the global climate action, engage youth in local communities, to prioritize children. In doing so, we hope to elevate future inequalities. And to close the intervention, I would like to recall the fact that having climate action without taking into consideration the inequalities that are going on into the world will not be achieving climate action. We believe that they must go hand in hand, and climate socially just transition is what the world needs to keep the hope, to keep the trust, and to keep the belief into their decision makers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Sugun, and that was the last keynote speaker for our session. Thank you very much, dear speakers, for the compelling perspectives and touching on different angles of the world and reflecting the diversity of efforts needed for enhancing international cooperation. Now we'll move to hear from the audience if there are any questions or reflections to make. For the sake of time, we can have only a few minutes to answer any questions or reflections to take on board as we meet the program. So we have one gentleman there, Monsieur Rook, please.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Axel Maikalova. I'm representing the research and independent NGOs here. My question goes to Dr. Festus. You've been talking about adaptation. I would be interested how you would see international carbon markets in Article 6. Grace too has mentioned Rome and Kenya, of course, as a front runner. So how could they look to reach the targets?
Keep in mind we'll collect the questions and then add to the speakers. If there is any more intervention, question, reflections, there is a lady behind on the left side, please.
Good morning and this afternoon already. My name is Monica Sissinga. I'm speaking on behalf of the Women and Gender Constituency. And my question is to all the presidency, especially as we continue to keep emissions to 1.5 degrees and making sure the next round of NDCs are really inclusive and that they leave no one behind. This year was supposed to be the year for review of the Gender Working Program and Gender Action Plan, but we have not heard or we are not seeing the strong leadership to get that as a core component of making sure the next round of NDC is strongly guided with a strong gender action, gender climate action. So really wanted to hear from you on how you will integrate gender responsive climate action to make sure that nobody's being left behind.
Thank you. And the last question, the audience. Let's see. One from this side. Any more reflections, questions, comments? I don't see any, so maybe we can proceed to other answers, please.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And during Kenya is really in the process of combining the Article 6, 6.2, 6.4, and carbon markets. We have worked on our legal framework, and one of the key things that we provided in the process is the option for bilaterals. As we speak, we have several bilaterals that we are concluding with various countries, and we have got something inside Article 10. So that is one of the things that we are looking at in terms of international cooperation, and of course, speeding up for climate finance through capital markets.
Thank you. And in response to the second question, this Minister Gabai left me from line perspective, but I would also ask for 30 and for 28 versions to like to have some procedures. So from 29 perspective, and the negotiations are of course one of our priorities is to have a agreement that is among our plans. We are working on several fronts to get advanced. But at the same time, from our own perspective, as in terms of management, we have within our co-presidency team excellent gender balance to be represented. 3 of the presidency team members are men and 3 are female. And also we are trying to mainstream the gender perspective to all our presidency initiatives that we have. So definitely take this under our spotlight to have the gender perspective to be under the spotlight during the implementation of these initiatives as well. So maybe from COP28 and COP30 presidencies, any further comments? Okay. So we will have sufficient opportunities during these days maybe to get engaged with the COP presidencies on several occasions and get your also get their feedback and reflections on your question. So dear colleagues, with your permission, I will now proceed to the closing remarks so that we can also move to the plenary part. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, for your invaluable insights and robust engagement today. Our dialogue has underscored the critical role of international cooperation in advancing climate action and elevating ambition in the forthcoming NDCs. By addressing shared challenges that cross borders and sectors, we have recognized the imperative of uniting our efforts to keep 1.5 goal within reach. We have highlighted the importance of creating enabling conditions that enhance collaboration among stakeholders from different sectors across global community. As we move forward, let's carry the spirit of cooperation and shared purpose into COP29 and beyond. By strengthening international collaboration, we can accelerate the implementation of climate policies that drive sustainable development. Our collective commitment and concerted actions are vital to building global resilience and securing a sustainable future for all. Once again, thank you for your contributions today, and we'll continue to work together turning dialogue into action and ambition into tangible results. Thank you. Colleagues, now we'll proceed to the next room for a plenary session.